guys? Welcome to Better Bachelor. My name is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. I like stories like these. I just the other day, if you guys didn't know it, I went over on Jeremy Hambley's, I think his last name is Jeremy Hambley, over at the Quartering. And he's kind of a guy that does movies and he talks about woke stuff and he kind of talks a little bit about current events and news. And at one point in time, he started dipping into talking about men's content. And over time, I noticed, I'm not only talking about men's stuff, but I'm talking about the woke stuff and things, because they all at one point or another kind of bleed together and kind of start combining. And before you know it, men's issues are always anti-woke, they're anti-DEI, they're anti-feminist, and they all kind of merge into one big pool. So it's interesting to have collaborations with other content creators that are kind of probably, I would say, blue pill normies, that are curious about what's going on with guys today, because Jeremy over at the Quartering's been married to his high school sweetheart since he was 17. So we're having some kind of bleed over. And I think that's a good thing, because when you look at stories like this, you do realize that, A, it is kind of a men's issue, because Hollywood is very anti-white, they're anti-straight, they're anti-male, they're anti-patriarchal, and the feminists and all these advocacy groups have gotten involved, and they've absolutely ruined it. And so I think it's only natural for us to, number one, say, A, guys are now voting with their money. They're not buying this stuff anymore. They're not renting it. Maybe they're sailing the high seas, going out and getting it online. Or they're just boycotting it completely. And that's with their money. And then on top of that, it's getting out there in the zeitgeist by guys talking about it and sharing it and laughing at it. And even if they stop right now and Hollywood says, oh my gosh, we got to stop putting out this woke crap, it's not working anymore, there's already a year or 2 or 3 years of movies in the pipeline that are already being recorded and written and filmed and then edited. And that's what happened to Indiana Jones and the Diapers of Destiny, where they already had it in the pipe and they spent another year and a half editing it, trying to get it to where it would be at least appreciated by the fans. And of course it wasn't, and it ended up costing, I don't know who wrote it, probably Disney, hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, Fall Guy with Ryan Gosling, who I like as an actor, Emily Blunt, I like her as an actor pretty well. They just released a new movie, and it was the #1 movie in the country. Only problem is no one heard of it, because no one really cares about Hollyweird anymore. So Hollyweird is only getting worse, and I find it hilarious. So I wanted to share my thoughts on this. This is from the New York Times via the Internet Archives, because I will not pay their woke asses any money. It says the Fall Guy fizzles with 28 million in ticket sales, while enough for the #1. So they got first place in for the week or the weekend in ticket sales. The big budget original movie gave Hollywood its lowest start to its summer box office season since 1995. They say the Fall Guy seemed to have everything: megawatt stars, death-defying stunts, splendid reviews, which doesn't mean anything based on Hollywood, an original story. What sequel weary moviegoers say they want? Universal backed the Fall Guy with a 6-month marketing campaign, releasing trailers that racked up 400 million views and carpet-bombed television sporting events, including the Super Bowl, with ads. It added up to only $28.5 million in North America ticket sales from Friday to Sunday, the worst start to Hollywood's all-important summer season since 1995. The Fall Guy cost... Now, here's the best part. This is the part when you read this, you go, oh my God. This cost Universal at least $200 million to make and market, and was released in 4,002 theaters in the United States and Canada. It collected an additional $37 million overseas. So in its opening blockbuster weekend, it roughly got, $65 million versus the $200 million they say it costs. Now, here's my problem with this. If they did for 6 months, if they did a marketing campaign for 6 months, and it's got Ryan Gosling and a bunch of effects and Emily Blunt, You're going to tell me that it only costs $200 million? Because usually the movie cost is doubled for marketing. So you're going to tell me they made this movie for $100 million and then the marketing only cost $100 million? We know that's wrong. More than likely, the movie itself cost $200 million. That would be much more in line with the cost of Hollywood today. And the marketing cost $200 million, and this is supposed to be probably a cost of $400 million to make. The reason why this is such a big deal is because Hollywood now can't make profitable movies anymore. And the reason why they can't make profitable movies anymore is because everybody wants way too much money, and they've got weirded out writers that can't write worth a crap, and they have certain demands because of the strikes and everything else that went on. And then you've got also the what do they call it? The consulting agencies that want to make sure that your movie is appropriately woke and it has all the right people in the right places and the right jobs with the right representation. And it's that bloat is not only killing Hollywood, but it's also doing the same thing to many of these companies out there that have stuffed their ranks with middle management nobodies. And I said that's going to have to get dumped at some point because you can't afford to keep paying these people this exorbitant amount of money to really do nothing that is an ad for the product. They say this is why studios do not take risks on new stories. The business is so tough and it's so hard to break through with new ideas, said David A. Gross, a film consultant who publishes a newsletter on box office numbers. You want to explain to shareholders why you spent hundreds of millions of dollars on a newfangled idea that crashed. The Fall Guy, an action comedy, shares a name and some basic DNA with television drama that ran on ABC from 1981 to 1986, but the movie's story is entirely new. Scott Mendelson, a box office columnist with its own subscription newsletter, said moviegoers complained that Hollywood isn't making enough original films, only to stay home or go elsewhere when they do. Well, here's your problem, okay? Because right in those paragraphs, they tell you everything that's a problem. Okay, from 1981 to 1986. All right, so anybody that knew of the TV show is going to be probably 50 years or older, 50 years and up. Because, if I was born in early 1970, so I would have been around 15 years old when The Fall Guy was on TV. And I do remember it, right? I do remember the show. Wasn't my jam, really. I wasn't really into it, but I do remember it. So if you're trying to now market The Fall Guy, well, you'd be marketing it to people like me if the movie was based on what the TV show was about. But it's not. So then they say, well, we've completely written it and it's completely different and it's completely original. Then that has nothing to do with The Fall Guy. On top of that, the other problem is a lot of people have been burned by Hollywood. They've gone to watch a movie, and then all of a sudden they realize, oh, crap, they have all this inclusivity and these other things that are involved. I don't want to give Hollywood the benefit of the doubt. I'll wait till it comes out on DVD. I'll wait till it's on, well, I guess they don't do DVD much anymore. Shows you my age. I'll wait till it comes out on streaming. I'll wait till I can sail the high seas to get it because I don't trust Hollywood. And the ticket price sales now are extremely expensive. I think now, depending on when you go, it's between $11, $12 and $14. And then on top of that, you're adding some snacks, like a little bucket of popcorn that's now $5 or $6. And before you know it, it's $20, $25 for one person to go to the movies and get all the snacks and the goodies they want if they really wanted to load up and they didn't know to line their pockets with food. So what people are doing now is because of the economy, because of what Hollywood's done in the past, they're saying, I don't trust any of this stuff, and I don't trust you. I'm gonna wait and check it out later by myself. And this is a fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Well, we've been fooled and fooled and fooled again and again and again by Hollywood, and people now are saying, I'm not down with this anymore. They say Ryan Gosling, fresh off Barbie and a celebrated singing performance at the Academy Awards, plays it down on his luck, whatever, guy, stuntman, whatever. It's the first time in 19 years that Hollywood's summer season, a 4-month period that typically accounts for 40% of annual ticket sales, did not start with a superhero or a sequel. Last year, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 from Marvel started the summer with $118 million in opening weekend ticket sales, going on to take in $846 million worldwide. But that was based off when the original Guardians of the Galaxies came out. It was good writing. It was funny. It didn't have a message. It was a good action film. It was simple. And so people believe in the brand of Guardians of the Galaxy, just like they originally believed it in like the Marvel Studios when it was the MCU instead of the MSHU. And shout out to Nerdrotic and the Critical Drinker for the rephrasing of that, the MSHU. Well, now people have been, once the last movie ended, where Tony Stark ends it and Thanos is saved, everybody's like, okay, that storyline is done. But now they come out with, oh, well, we've got this empowered female group and this empowered blah, blah, blah group and the message and the message and the message. And people said, I'm done with this stuff. They say when movies arrive to disappointing ticket sales, studios always say they're hopeful that word of mouth will result in a wider audience in the weeks to come. Universal was no different on Sunday, saying in a statement that it anticipates continued playability for this action thriller. But the problem we're having now is that in the world we live in today, it's, we've got these protests and the economy and the border and crisis after crisis and bad news after bad news after bad news. And the announcement of a new movie, the announcement of a studio release, people are kind of like, I've got other things to worry about right now. I don't really care. Maybe it's kind of like apathetic. I don't care. I've got too many other things on my mind. I got too many concerns in the world. I got other things to spend my money on. And here's another example. Why a failed video game cost Warner Brothers $200 million. Now, granted, video games aren't part of Hollywood, but it's kind of the same thing. The DEI, the inclusivity, we need to make sure programmers are equally represented. We need to have these departments that all they do is slow down the process, and the consultants that mess with this stuff. And now the video game industry is suffering, or at least the big studios are suffering. What they don't understand about people like myself, I go back and watch movies from the 1960s and the 1970s and the 1980s. I love those movies. I have a media library that probably consists of, I don't know, 1,000 movies. I can watch some of those dozens of times. You put The Shawshank Redemption, or you put, I don't know, The Wolf of Wall Street. You put those, well, even that, maybe The Wolf of Wall Street's not a great example, but maybe so. Anyway, you compare those to the new stuff that's coming out today. The older stuff's way better. I can watch Demolition Man a dozen times, and it's fun. Movies are not fun anymore. They don't feel fun. Well, now that's into the video games, and just like the movies, matter of fact, I've played Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4, Fallout 76. Those games I can play for hundreds of hours, not to mention probably the other 200 video games I have in my library. And that's just for consumption. Other than that, of course, I got hobbies and I'm going out and doing other things, and usually I'm working. So guys have no problems watching old movies, watching old TV shows, and playing old games. But they say, why a failed video game cost Warner Brothers $200 million? And this is over the Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. Warner Brothers Discovery reported a $200 million loss on the game. It's a reminder of how similar the video game business is to Hollywood. Big expenses, big rewards, big penalties for missing. Big media companies can't ignore video games, but should they be making their own? Did you play, End the Justice League? No, I didn't. The video came out in February, me neither. And the problem for Warner Brothers Discovery, which released the game, is that very few people did, and the ones who did didn't really like it. And that led the company to take a staggering $200 million loss on the game, which it disclosed in its first quarter earnings Thursday. Look, I know video games production is expensive, but when did making a video game cost $200 million? I don't know what talent they're getting, whether it's for the voice acting. I think it's just because of bloat and because of these agencies they need to collaborate with, and it's because of all the other crap. Because I'll tell you now, you go back, there's is it called Ridgeworld, Rimworld, something like that. That was made by like one guy, and then a bunch of people piled on with add-ons and updates and kind of patched it and hobbled it into this really cool game. You look at some of the other ones. There's content creators that make patches and and mods for a lot of games that you don't really require that many people to make a game. But they keep doing it because they think, oh, this is going to be the biggest thing ever, and they dump all this money into it only to have it be disappointing in the end. If you took if you took a good written game, a good idea, and maybe it wasn't star-studded voice actors, maybe it didn't have a lot of CGI in it. It was just like a top-down game, and maybe it cost you $10 million. Well, if that failed, you can make 20 of those before you get to where this $200 million loss on one game is. That's a huge gamble. And again, it's not good. They've gotten the wrong attitude that we'll spend more money and make it flashier and bigger and more whatever. And real game players know some of the simplest, easiest games. You go back when you're my age, some of the oldest games, the graphics were horrible on them. They didn't have any voice acting. It was all read to text, but it was still a good game. It was still interesting. There are people that still play Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, and that was a top-down mess, but it was a great game. They say WBD CFO Gunnar Wenfels described the game resulting as disappointing, and the company repeatedly pointing out the impact of the game's failure on its bottom line, particularly since a year ago it had a massive hit with a different game, Hogwarts Legacy. All of which points out something the games industry has been grappling with for some time. It looks more and more like Hollywood. That means it places very big bets on would-be blockbusters, which are increasingly tied to intellectual property, and that's been successful in the past. When the strategy works, it's great, and when it doesn't, big failures. But even by those standards, the Squad is a spectacular dud in line with some of the worst mistakes a movie studios ever made. In 2012, for instance, Disney announced that it would take a $200 million charge for John Carter. A year later, it said it would lose up to $190 million on the Lone Ranger. All of which might make you question, yet again, if a big media company ought to be into games at all. Big media doesn't have an answer to that question, by the way. Sometimes companies like Disney make really big investments in games, correctly assessing that people who watch their TV shows and movies also spend a lot of time playing games. Sometimes they pivot out of that strategy after concluding that making good TV shows and movies doesn't give them a leg up when it comes to making games. Sure, but here's the problem. Disney's not making good movies. Disney's not making good shows. Disney went woke. Disney has all the DEI and the inclusivity and the representation. That's what their focus is. It's not making good movies. It's not making good shows. It's not making good games. The way the games can still be made successfully for a company like Disney or whoever else is they say, okay, we're going to fund you. We're going to support you. You go do it. You go make it happen. Hands off. Like whatever and then when it's done, put it out there. Instead, they've got consultants working on it while it's being made and making changes, and then halfway through, and then at the end, and then blah, 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 and it just gets churned up in the machine. They say, and you can see it at other big media companies like at Disney, which has made multiple forays into games, pulled back, and most recently announced a $1.5 billion investment in Epic Games, the company behind Fortnite. And Netflix started building its own games division a few years ago, though the results seem underwhelming so far. See, they're going to suffer, and they're going to make the same mistakes they always do. They see the gaming market is big. It's huge. It's huge, especially with young guys. Young guys, they want to get on and play a game. I don't know, let me pull something, Call of Duty. They want to play Call of Duty, and they want to get in there, and they want to trash talk, and they want to goof on each other, and they want to call everybody a retarded fag, because it's funny and it's fun. But then these companies get involved, and they say, "Oh, we're gonna have AI that scrubs language. You can report people. You can complain about things," and it does get some of the toxicity out of the game. But the same guys that are there that can put up with the toxicity and actually find it funny and really enjoy it, they leave the game. And now you've got a watered down game. And now you've got a game built for little kids, like Fortnite is. Now, if some of you adults like Fortnite, that's fine. For me, I find it cartoonish and silly. Not my type of game. That's okay. Don't hate me for it. It's just not my jam. But let's admit it, it's 12-year-olds playing Fortnite. Although I guess you could say the same thing about Pokemon and say, oh, that's a kid's game, but then you look and it's a bunch of 35-year-old neckbeards and I'm going to piss everybody off today with this one. But you know what I mean, right? It's like the demographic that they originally make the game for isn't the people that enjoy it. And movie studios can't figure out what they're doing. So when they get into the gaming stuff, they can't figure that either. And on the Warner Brothers note, Warner Brothers Discovery reveals a $966 million loss, $1 billion, impaired by decreased ad sales and Hollywood strikes. They're struggling across the board, and nobody knows what the heck is going on, except those of us that are saying, hey, you don't make anything we like anymore, and the things that you make and we might like, we don't go to see because we don't trust you anymore. You know, Rotten Tomatoes, it came out that Rotten Tomatoes was posting up reviews by top critics, and those critics, many of them were just getting $50 to write a good story about the movie. It's a sham. It's all a scam. And these companies can get away with that for a little while. I used to really like IMDb. I mean, the format's great. It's a good layout. It's got good web development. It's got good information. I might go there to see how much a movie made or opening weekend or maybe some statistics. I tell you what I don't use Rotten Tomatoes for, the reviews. And ironically, it's a review site. That's what it's best known for. Even IMDb ran into some of this because, and I may be wrong on this, but I think IMDb is owned by Amazon. So when Amazon puts out Lord of the Rings and some of their other things, and they say to IMDb, like, hey, we need to make sure this has a good score on there. IMDb is like, you got it, boss, because they pay our salaries, so now you can't trust IMDb on stuff. I think Metacritic still is pretty accurate, but who are most people turning to for a real review of the movie? YouTubers. I like the Critical Drinker. Who I was mentioning earlier, The Quartering, Jeremy over The Quartering, Geeks and Gamers, Nerdrotic. There's so many more that I'm missing. These guys go out there and they will pay the money that you and I don't want to pay. They'll watch the movies we don't know if we're going to like, and they'll turn around and they'll say, it had good, it had bad. They're the ones that pumped up Top Gun, and I said, I should go see this. I watched it. It was good. They're the ones that said, don't go watch, the Marvels or whatever. And then I watched it, and they were right. It was bad. More people are turning to like-minded people and getting away from Hollywood, getting away from the media people and the writers and the shills and the corporate, and they're coming back down to based. And I think that's a good thing. But Hollywood and the video game industry is such a big behemoth that it takes them forever to steer the boat. And it's taking them too long to come around and course correct on these issues. When I was a kid, and granted, when I mean I was a kid, I was like in my young 20s. So when I was a young man in my 20s, my friends and I were talking about girls going out to the club or the pub on the weekend to maybe get some action or get a girlfriend or go on dates or have some fun or whatever. We went to sporting events. We weren't really concerned about the economy, and we weren't concerned about political things. But now, everybody, like young people today, all they scream about is what's going on in Gaza and what's going on in there and what's in the Ukraine, and fly the flags and protest this and scream about that. And so a large portion of young people that probably would be the target audience for a movie like this, they got other things going on. And so until Hollywood learns that, number one, they're going to have to come in with some cheap, low-budget, good films that don't focus on the special effects, maybe go back to practical effects instead of this awful CGI, because the quality of CGI has fallen off a cliff. Come back with some cheap movies that are good, that have good stories, that are interesting, and let people come to trust Hollywood again. But they can't. They can't do that because they must push the message, and they must make these. They keep thinking that these big, big movies for hundreds of millions of dollars are what people are interested in. I think people are watching YouTube and people are on TikTok and people are over on Rumble or whatever. They're on the internet because they want to see people that are like them just kind of sharing lives and having a conversation with them, a heart-to-heart, an interesting conversation where both people on both sides of the camera actually care. You know, I care about you guys out there, and because I'd never use the word fans, but I would say you guys out there that like my viewpoint on things and say, yeah, I'd like to hear and I like to know that there are other like-minded people out there. And I like hearing from you guys. Maybe it's more accurate to say I'm a fan of yours, because I read through a lot of the comments on my videos, and I don't always necessarily heart or comment, but I read them to see, hey, do people agree with me? Am I the one that's kind of drifting off into the cornfield, licking a chocolate chip ice cream cone and yelling about the weather and true a knob and a shab and a pressure? Is that me, or am I staying grounded? And I think we're all staying pretty grounded. We all have an agreement on this, that no one likes the Hollywood elites anymore, and the bug and the jabs really ruined that, because all they did is preach at you and tell us how awful we were, and then if we don't think and vote the same way we do or they do, we're also awful people that are just stupid mouth-breathing racists. There's a point in time where you say, you know what, I don't really care about Hollywood anymore. I get more interest about watching like-minded people that are just like me, sitting somewhere talking on a microphone in front of a video camera. And I think that's where the new social media goes, is going to be independent creator content. And if they're going to keep the movies alive, if the movies are to survive, they're going to have to make them cheap. They're going to have to bring the pricing down on the tickets. They're going to have to make them interesting with some story and some heart. The big explosions and all that, that's fine, but you're going to have to win back the trust of people before you can go that direction again, because the $200, $300, $400 million blockbusters, those days are numbered and they're struggling. Guys, if you're over here on YouTube, make sure to hop over on betterbachelor.locals.com. Of course, we have the Rumble site. Both of those are doing very well. Again, if you didn't see my interview with Jeremy over at the Quartering, you can find it on Quartercast, all one word, I think, Quartercast here on YouTube, or you can go over to the Rumbles, and that is on his main page of the Quartering over there. So we had a good conversation. I think I can't say that I maybe changed his mind about anything, but we did discuss a lot of the issues that men are having, and he's in agreement. He can see what's going on in the world today. And when kind of a married normie, well, excuse me, he's not a normie, but I mean, about the red pill stuff, he's a normie. You know, when a guy that's on YouTube and has, I don't know, 1.5 million subscribers, when he's starting to go, man, guys are struggling, and we got these problems, and he's a married guy since high school, like he married his high school sweetheart. When he's starting to see these issues, it means it is becoming enough that even if the establishment and the media and the government doesn't want to acknowledge that it's real, at least all the guys are getting on the same page, saying, you know what, we know what's going on. We'll let the leftards do their thing and go crazy. But the rest of us are going to kind of stay based, understand what's going on. We're going to keep our heads in the game and see what's going on. So hop over to my other channels if you want to. Get the heck off YouTube. Get away from the censorship. I'd appreciate it. And we will see you guys in the next one.